Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? I'm just going to press the button to trigger Gary Muirhead's morning message. Good morning. Let me see who we got here. We've got Chris Ford. We've got Dan Cullen. We have got Ken Hatcher. We've got Gary Muirhead and Jim Turner's here as well. Good morning to each and every one of you. The show will start at some point, I promise. But first, I need to say something, and to do it, I'm going to go completely off script, if you'll just bear with me for a moment. One of our regular viewers is struggling at the moment, mentally, financially. I'm not going to name him. Those of you that are regulars here will know precisely who I'm talking about. I'm not going to name him because it's not my place to do so. I had a phone call last week. I think I was in Holland, or a message actually came through from Peter McKenna. I was in Holland at the time, couldn't do a great deal about it, but he basically said, your man's struggling a bit, it's very depressed, very down. So I sent him a message as best I could, bearing in mind I was in the middle of a field in Holland, got a response back, and you know, the conversation went on. I then got another message yesterday from Dan Cullen, and Dan very kindly said, you know, we should use this community to you know, try and raise a few quid to help him out. And apparently that came as a direct conversation. Direct result was of a conversation between Dan, who obviously is a regular, and Nigel Williams, who is one of life's nice guys. Not here anywhere near as much as I would like, but Nigel is a good guy. I looked into the possibility of starting a GoFundMe page, but they take a while. They're a bit cumbersome and stuff. So I decided that the easiest way I could play any sort of role in this is to sign over my buymeacoffee.com account. And basically what I've said is I will, any money raised on that Buy Me a Coffee website between now and the 20th of December, you know, in the run up to Christmas, will be given to our friend who is struggling. And I put that in the WhatsApp group yesterday, and well, just blown away by the generosity of everyone. I do need to mention in particular Gary Muirhead and Al Grierson, who really have gone above and beyond the call of duty. I don't know if it's Christmas spirit or just plain community spirit, but truly, you know, I'm an emotional robot and stuff, but from the bottom of my heart, and I really mean this, guys, thank you to everyone that's done something, that's given something, that's taken the time, given money, just given something of themselves to help out, you know, one of our brothers in need. Thank you. I'll be the first to admit, I do get very upset, frustrated, angry about this industry and about humanity in general at times. But this has been an absolutely fantastic reminder that people, most people are just intrinsically good and decent. So guys, honestly, on behalf of our friend, who we all know who he is, but he's going to remain nameless because I don't want to portray him as a charity case. He's not. He's a hardworking guy who's just had a really shitty run of luck recently, and he's probably laid up in bed right now, nursing COVID and stuff like that. Not a great time, and a terrible time for it to be happening as well. So let me just put this on the screen. It's not too late. I've already triggered the first bunch of money to come to me so that I can send it back out again. Let me find it. There we are. If you are in a position, and let me just make this absolutely clear. If you are in a position to help, even if it's 3 quid, 5 quid, 10 quid, doesn't matter. If you are in a position to help, please do so. That's how you do it. You go to buymeacoffee.com/demolition news. And by doing so, basically there's a bunch of books on there and stuff like that. You get those for free. You know, I'm basically throwing open my shop, and anything that we sell, because they're all electronic anyway, they already exist. Anything you buy between now and the 20th of December, all the money, I'm not talking about the profits, I'm not talking about the margin, I'm talking about all the money that goes into that website over the next 8 days. I had to do the math very quickly. Any money that goes into that over the next 8 days will be going to our man who's fallen on fairly hard times. So if ever you've read an article and thought, that Mark Anthony seems like a pretty good bloke. If ever you've enjoyed one of these shows, if ever you've listened to a podcast, if ever you've admired the hat that I'm wearing on a particular day, if you've done any of those things, or if you just feel like reaching out and helping, giving a leg up to one of your fellow construction demolition workers, now's the time. buymeacoffee.com/demolition news. And I've already said it, but I'm going to say it again because honestly, I'm just just genuinely touched. This is a weird thing. This is what we're doing here is a weird thing. Looking at the audience now, I've met Jim Turner, and I've met Ken Hatcher, and I've met Dan Cullen, and I've met Peter McKenna. I haven't seen Peter in the chat yet, but I've met all of those guys. But I've never met Chris Sword. I've never met Gary Muirhead. I've never met. There was somebody else lurking there as well. I can't remember who it was. But yeah, there's a bunch of you guys that I have never met. And you not only have you not met me, a lot of you have not met each other. And the very fact that you've taken the time out to pick up the phone and speak to our guy who's struggling, the fact that you've picked up your checkbooks and you've forwarded some money and all of those things, I honestly tip my hat to you. You've made a very cynical old bastard very, very proud indeed. Ultimately, when one of these days this show will end, I'd like to think that I'm going to just expire on camera. That's the way I'd like to go. This show will end one day, through retirement, or you'll all get bored and bugger off and do something else on a weekday morning. But this show will end one of these days. And nobody will remember the fancy graphics. Nobody will remember the videos. Nobody will remember me ranting, pressing buttons, cocking up, fluffing my lines. Nobody will remember that. What they will remember is the fact that when one of our number needed us, you guys stepped up. And even if this show ended tomorrow, we'll have done a thing. We'll have done a thing of which you can all be incredibly proud. So, for the final time, thank you. I'm going to keep that banner running across the bottom of the screen there, just to let you, if you haven't already done so, please do so. Gary Muirhead says, well said, Mark. It's a sad day when we can't help one of our brothers in arms. And just thank you, Gary. Just a very quick one on that. We're not specifically talking financial help here. And I realise not everybody has got, a spare 20 quid in their back pocket that they're willing to send a complete stranger. And let's face it, we're talking about doing precisely that. Not everybody is in that position. But what you can do, send him a text, send him a WhatsApp message, give him a call, just to remind him, yeah, it is tough at the moment, and it is. But we're here. You've got some friends that you may have never actually met, but you've got some friends who are there for you. Dan Cullen says, thank you, Mark. It's a great thing you've done. I'll be sorting tomorrow. Dan, I have to say, two people. I've mentioned the fact that both Al Griss and Gary Muirhead have given very generously, but I would say that none of this would exist without three people, basically. Peter McKenna, who basically gave me the heads up that our man was really struggling. Nigel Williams, who has acted on his own volition and has already sent some money to our man, and Dan Cullen, who reached out yesterday and said, look, you've got an audience. Let's make use of it. And I wish I'd thought of it before, which goes to show that I am basically an emotional robot. I didn't think of that at the time. So it took Dan Cullen to push me over the line. So thank you for that, Dan. Dan says, I'm the same as yourself. I get big emotion when we get together. Yeah. Now, not many I'll do this, use their show or their payment method to help. It's not, I'm not going to dwell on it. Funnily enough, I've just seen in the chat over on Instagram, I've got both Natalie Huxtable and John Huxtable, who obviously lost one of their relatives in Didcot. And I did it back then. All I can do, I've got a platform. All I can do is do what I can do. And as I say, I could have gone down the GoFundMe page or, whatever it might be. But I've already got a vehicle. And also, I just thought if anybody has ever thought, and I'm thinking about not the regulars here because you've already done it, but I'm thinking about anybody else that's watching. If ever you've thought, Mark Anthony, he's a bit of a tool at times, but I wouldn't mind buying him a cup of coffee or something like that. Well, that money from the cup of coffee are going to our friend. Gary Muirhead sums it up. We may not break bread together every day or speak together every day on the phone, but I'm truly blessed to call everyone here a friend. Yeah. I've said this before, and I don't want to make this about me because it certainly isn't. It's not about me at all. But I am actually quite a lonely kind of guy. Kind of focused all my attention on my best mate, who obviously sadly was killed in a motorcycle accident. Which, day to day, I mean, I've got friends, but most of the people that I would generally call friends are actually friends, or they're the husbands of my wife's friends. We've been thrown together by fate, and I sometimes go to the football with them and stuff like that. So I do count on you guys. I make no bones about it. You lot got me through a really shitty time. When COVID went tits, basically made my entire career go tits up. Yeah, you got me through some tough times, and now you're doing it again. And I just want to thank you very much indeed to. It comes up as John Huxtable over on Instagram. Obviously, it's not John because he did pass away sadly last year. So this is actually coming from John's mum. So good morning, John's mum. Thank you very much indeed for being here. But guys, I'm not going to dwell on it any longer. You know what you've done. I'm touched. I'm made up. I'm all of those things by what you've done. And on behalf of our friend for whom you've done it, a massive, massive thank you. Now, having got all... I've actually got something in my eye. I'm not crying, I promise, because I am an emotional robot. Having got all of that off my chest, without further ado, let me roll the intro. I'm going to do the show properly now. I'm going to roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. Just going to say a very quick good morning to our man Footy. Hi guys, how are you? I've just managed to get out of bed. I'm actually sitting in the chair. All the best, Footy. Good to hear you're on the mend, Footy, my friend. Glad to hear it. Dan says, Gary, I'm the same here. We're all friends, and as I consider a big family, we're in it together. Wouldn't the whole world be a better place if we all felt like that? Yes, Dan, you're absolutely right. And our friend Mick has just joined us as well. You've missed me being all misty-eyed, Mick, which is a deeply unpleasant thing to watch. So thank you for being here. So yes, let's start, shall we? It is Thursday, the 12th of December. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, Develon does Demolition. Take 2. If you were here... Can't remember if it was the end of last week or the beginning of this week. We tried to play a Develon Demolition film. Went horribly, horribly wrong. I think I've got it sorted. In addition to that, Cardem collapses conveyors, ship breaking on a grand scale all the way from New Zealand. Plus, in my morning monologue today, how we could put a massive dent in the nation's homeless crisis and the industry skill shortage simply by using existing resources. Yeah, I hope you can stick around for that one because I'm actually quite proud of it. I'm a smug git anyway. I'm proud of most of what I write. But this one in particular, when I finished it, I actually sat back and went, you're pretty good at this. I do that every day, to be perfectly honest. So, yes, what are we doing? Yeah, Mystery Machine. We do need to unveil our Mystery Machine. The scores on the doors are currently Mark Anthony, 12 points. Garvin over Mostly Diggers, 3 points. Chris Ford, 3 points. Can we have a new name on the board, or do I emerge victorious today? We shall see immediately after this. Yeah, 17 minutes in, and we've finally got to the start of the show. Here we go. Mystery Machine looks like that. I'm looking, as always, for a make and a model, if you would be so kind. Would I recognise it from that? No, I don't think I would, and I know what it is. If you've got any guesses on that, please let us know. While you're figuring that out, I do need to very quickly remind you of today's question of the day, which is this. Yep, our question of the day once again comes from our resident quizmaster, Mr. Gary Muirhead, and his question is quite simply this: when do you feel truly alive? When do you feel truly alive? When Gary sent me that question, he guessed that mine would probably be when West Ham score a goal, something that happens fairly rarely these days. Yeah, it does cheer me up. It does make me happy, but I have to say, fishing or just being by the water. I'd happily sit on a beach and watch the sea, or sit on a riverbank and watch the river for hours, just emptying my head. Well, let's be honest, it's already mostly empty anyway. Just listening to the sound of the water. But what about you? When do you feel truly alive? I'm going over to Instagram in just a moment to talk about all things Didcot related. But very quickly, what have we got here? Did we have... When do you feel truly alive? Let's have a look. Dan Cullen says, when I know I can help and support others in their time of need, even buying a coffee. Top work, my friend. Top work. Ken Hatcher, when I get up in the morning. Do you? I need at least 2 cups of coffee before I think, yes, I've made it through another night. Chris says, when I wake up in the morning and I hurt. Yes. The pain is a nice reminder that you did make it through another night. Gary Muirhead reckons that our Mystery Machine could be this, a Cat 235 BME. It is not one of those. Mick says, when you get 8.5 inches of tongue across my face at 4:30 a.m. from the hound wanting to go out. They do make you feel like that, don't they? They do. 8.5 inches, that's a lot of tongue. As the actress said to the bishop. Dan Cullen, I used to buy an older homeless guy a coffee and a sandwich when he was at the train station every morning until he wasn't there. I asked the question where he was, heard he passed away the previous week. That's awful. That's awful. Funnily enough, and I promise I will get over to Instagram in just a moment. There was a guy sleeping on a park bench in a park very close to where we used to live. And on a nightly basis, my wife would actually cook him, bangers and mash and, all the things. And I'd literally tinfoil over the top, take it over to him, have a chat with him, fetch last night's plate, bung that in the dishwasher. And we did that for weeks. And he moved on. I'm fair. I mean, he was quite a young guy. But yeah, it doesn't help. And, I was talking about it at the top of the show. We've all fallen on hard times at times. We've all had our run-ins and stuff like that. I believe in paying it forward, because you never know, somebody might one day need to pay it back, and that would be very, very handy. Jim Turner says, when I'm crying, I can't imagine Jim Turner crying. But, he's a human, so why the hell not? When I'm crying, which usually happens if I'm watching a sad film, the rest of the time I just feel numb. That is a weird thing, isn't it? I mentioned it and I quickly breezed over it because I didn't want to, get all maudlin and what have you. But that's kind of how I've felt since I lost my best mate. I say to my wife a lot and far too often, and if she's listening to this, I apologise unreservedly. I say the term or the phrase, I don't care, so much these days. Something happens on the TV. I don't care. Oh, I spoke to so and so today. I don't care. It's like something's been removed. And speaking of things being removed, just going to go back to John, the Huxtables. Let's put it like that. Mark, are you doing anything for the 9 years on the 23rd of February? I can't believe it's been that long. My heart is broken. I've lost my two boys. Yes, of course. I'll be honest with you. I haven't I haven't framed my mood yet. And I know, listen, I'm sure you've been through exactly the same as I have, only much more intensely and much more closely than I have. When Didcot happened, like the day it happened or the day after and the weeks that followed, I was shocked. And then I was sad. And then I was desperately sad. And then I was angry. And then I was frustrated. And then I was desperate. And we are now, what are we? Well, let's call it 2 months. It's a little bit more than that, but let's call it 2 months. 23rd of February, 2025 will be 9 years since 4 men lost their lives at Didcot. I will, of course, be marking it in some way, but until I've got my brain in order to figure out how to approach it, I don't actually know what to do with it. If there's something you would like me to say, I'd be more than happy to say it, because frankly, you are way closer to it than I am. And I'm speaking to John Huxtable's mum here. You are way closer to it than I am, and you, Natalie, as well. I'm speaking specifically to you. If there's anything that I could say on your behalf, I'd be happy to say it, because otherwise it's just going to be somebody largely disconnected ranting for the 9th consecutive year. And I just very, very quickly, Mick says, sorry, mate, was that Natalie? I shot into the kitchen. It's Natalie and her mum, actually. They're both over on Instagram at the moment. So, yeah, they're both here as well. Jim Turner, going back to what he was talking about with what makes you feel alive. Jim Turner, being next to water makes me feel at ease and where I ought to be. Yeah, it is. It is a peace-giving thing, isn't it? So, Mystery Machine, don't want to go too far off beam on this. Jim Turner reckons it could be a John Deere grader. It is not one of those. Garvin over at Most Diggers says it looks like a cat milling machine or a planer. It does. You're right. I agree, but it isn't. So let me show you a bit more. There you are. Taz Wheels. And I'm numb every day after losing my husband and John's only and son's only Natalie I've got left. Well, you're lucky to have Natalie, because having spoken to her, she's lovely. But as I say, if there's anything I can do, even if, and I mean this, even if you want me to stand here and scream and shout and swear and stamp my feet and bang my fists on the desk for an hour solid, yeah, fine, count me in. I'll do it. Not a problem at all. Wolfie has just joined us all the way from the United States of America. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Mick Norton is here as well. Mick says, pass my regards to them, please, and try to enjoy this time of year if they can. Yeah, please, try to enjoy this time of year if you can. Obviously, February is going to be deeply sad, deeply unpleasant, triggering, and all of those things. But if you possibly can, the Huxtable family, please try to have a good Christmas. We'll reconvene after Christmas, get our heads together, and see what the hell we can do to make everybody remember precisely where we are. 9 years. 9 years. Who would have thought we'd be having that conversation? I very naively predicted that the investigation would take 4 years. I wasn't even close. We've doubled that and more. I don't know if any of the families are hearing anything out of the police or out of the health and safety executive. My expectation is probably another trite, cliched message on the anniversary. Or we're working on this case. We are in regular contact with the families. Well, frankly, and this isn't on behalf of the families. This is on behalf of me. I'm calling bullshit. You've dragged your heels. You drag your heels, and you've rubbed salt into an already festering wound. Pull your bloody finger out and get this thing resolved, would you? Chris Ford reckons that our mystery machine could well be a Komatsu WA500. It's not, but you're not far off. Mick says, I will stand with you there, mate. Yeah, fine. Absolutely. I was told 5 years. They talk shit. They do talk shit. You're absolutely right. Cat 996, it's not. Why isn't that playing? Cat 996 is not a Cat 996. It's not a Cat 996 GC either. Let's have a look. Wolfie says, I felt most alive when I found the will to live again. That was a few years ago. I'm sure I've had instances where I felt very alive since, but I don't recall any of them specifically. Felt the most alive when I found the will to live again. There's a backstory there. I'm not sure this is a public forum for it, but yeah, I used to live very close to a guy, and he was an intensely annoying guy to the point where I kind of lost touch with him. But he'd had a heart transplant, and as a result of the heart transplant, I mean, I think he had his heart transplant in his 20s, and he's now in his 50s. And he actually celebrates his birthday these days on the date of his heart transplant, because it was, as far as he was concerned, and I don't mean in a religious sense, as far as he was concerned, it was a rebirth. And yeah, having been given that second chance, he truly grasped it. You know, he's in his 50s, but as fit as anything, yeah, I can well imagine. Going back to our mystery machine very quickly, Chris Ford reckons he's on the right track, and he sort of is. WA450, it's not a WA600 either. I'll tell you now, it's a tad bigger than that, and it's not quite as straightforward as you think it is, if you see what I mean. Anywho, I'll be back right after this with a film that I tried to play about a week ago that failed. I played it this morning and it worked. Fingers crossed. Yes, if you were here whenever it was, I gave it the big intro about how Develon was doubling down on Demolition. Develon doubling down. You see, I like a bit of alliteration, and I thought I'd come up with a perfect intro. Press the play button. Nothing happened. So I'm going to try again. Develon doubling down in Demolition. Here. If at first you don't succeed, try, and then give up. Yeah, I'm going to say a very quick good morning to Ivor Dofferhoff, International Sales Manager at Daharco BV. Daharco, obviously, attachments and stuff, but also some damn fine dust suppression equipment. Good morning to Ivor Dofferhoff, who is watching over on Instagram, apparently. Thank you for being here. Mrs. Huxtable says, "Oh my God, I can't watch to think what my son went through. Just playing the Demolition video. Probably insensitive of me, and I apologise. Just to trigger warning. There's another demolition video coming up. If you want to look away, please do so. Let me just have a look. I've got the running schedule over here by my side. Yeah, in actual fact, it's the next video up. It's another demolition video. If that's too much, fully understand. Bail out. Let's have a chat offline when I'm not playing demolition videos. And apologies. So yes, what do we got here? We've got some stuff in the chat. No, I'll do that in just a moment. Footy says demolition video was actually brilliant. I totally agree, but obviously, given the issues, our friend Wolfie was suffering from depression and is now bounced back. I'm kind of envious of that. I'm kind of envious of that because I went through the same thing and had 9-10 months on happy pills and stuff like that. Came out the other end, was never entirely convinced whether it was the pills that did it or whether I'd just shaken off whatever it was that was ailing me. But I never got that, oh, that's better. I never got that. It was almost a case of, I'm past the worst, let's crack on with my life. So I'm very envious of you. We're going basically through the Komatsu product range on this, the WA450, the 600, the 900. Jim Turner reckons it could be a wheeled dozer of some sort. It is not. Chris Ford is going a bit bigger still, the WA800. It is not one of those. Let me show you a smidge more. There you are. That's it. Adelaide Plant Recovery, who are becoming a regular viewer over on Instagram. Are you actually in Adelaide? Are you down under? If you are, good morning. But thank you for joining us. I did see you go through the chat yesterday. Thank you for joining us. I hope you're enjoying the show. And if you are actually in Adelaide, good day. Yes, should we move on? Or should I show you a bit more? I can afford to show you a bit more. There you are. That's the mystery machine. I think we all know roughly what it is. It's just a matter of getting the right model at this point. So, trigger warning over and done with. I'll be back after this with more demolition.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before, and I'll be very, very clear about it. There are certain demolition companies around the world that I just enjoy watching. Despe over in Italy, Priestley over in Canada, CDI in America, Cardem in France, because they do stuff like this. Cracking film. Awesome music as well. And Cardem. Tip my hat to them. Absolutely fantastic company. Had the pleasure of actually working with them on a project, a bridge demolition over in Paris many moons ago. All machines in white, all the attachments in white, all beautifully cared for, and absolute. Reminded me a lot of Armac. Just did things right. It was like watching something. It was balletic. It really was. So Cardem, I tip my hat to you. We have a winner on our mystery machine. Our mystery machine looks like that. Lots and lots of guesses around the Komatsu product range. WA500 says Dan Cullen, the Dash 8. He also went for the WA700-8. Chris Ford went for the WA470. All good guesses. We had a WA900-8. We had a WA500-8. We had a WE2350, which was very close, but the correct answer was that. It is, in fact, a Komatsu WE1850. It's a -3, actually, just to be completely pedantic about it. But there you are, just to show you what it is. There you are. I don't know whether that's one of the old Latorno ones, which I think Jim Turner suggested. Latorno-based Komatsu with big shovel. Don't know what number it is. I think this one is either electric or it's a hybrid. I can't remember whether the WE denotes hybrid or electric, or maybe it denotes both. I honestly don't know, but that's what it is. Fantastic job of Dan Cullen. Remarkably, last month's champion has got his first points on the board, so congratulations, Dan. Well done. Mick says, nice setup, but I've done a job the same way years ago. Yeah, nothing new under the sun in demolition. Kind of. I've got a video coming up that will prove otherwise. Keep an eye out for that. I'll keep you posted. Anyway, we've done the mystery machine. We've put that to bed. A question of the day is still ongoing. When do you feel truly alive? While you're still mulling that over, I'm going to play this because we've got some more demolition. Kind of demolition, more shipbreaking actually. Back after this. Chris Ford, going back to the mystery machine, which is that. Now you can see the cab. It gives it some scale, yeah. Yeah, if you're the operator on that, you are merely a speck. You really are. What is there? 20 steps up to the cab? Yeah. We don't generally feature ship breaking because, it's not really demolition, but this one is, mainly because it's using excavators to do it. And when I tell you we're talking a pair of PC850s, Komatsus again, PC850s, those of you that know your Komatsu products will know just how big a PC850 is. They've got two of them on this job, and they're dwarfed. Have a look. Yeah, just so you know, that's McMahon Services over in New Zealand. They were one of the companies they had multiple entries actually in the latest round of the New Zealand Demolition and Asbestos Association Awards that I was one of the judges on. And they honestly, they really do some fantastic work. There were three companies that really stood out for me. Just if you fancy looking them up on YouTube, they were one, Ward Demolition, Taggart, all three doing some absolutely top-notch work. I've tipped my hat a lot, but I'll do it again. There you are. I'm tipping my hat. Dan Cullen also says, I also feel like when I get complimented on a job I'm doing, and getting up in the morning, getting to get into a machine like a Komatsu. Yeah. This is and I'll do this one first. This is Footy saying this is an awesome job taking the ship apart. Only trouble is you have to be careful of the toxic fumes and the chemicals, everything left in the tanks and the fuel and everything. Yeah, absolutely you do. Absolutely you do. I would imagine there was a fair degree of remediation that went on before the demolition started, but point well made. This, I think, is really telling. Footy says, I do miss not driving a machine all the time, and I love getting up in the morning, go to your job. Sure, you get a bit deflated when you want to do a job and suddenly they say to you, sorry, go home, got no work for you. That's when it starts. That's when you start to feel a bit down. There's a thing that people miss, I think, with work. Obviously, I think we all get up to go and earn a crust, put the roof over or kick the roof over our heads, to put food on the table, and all, to basically you work in order to afford the things that you want and need and desire and stuff like that. And I say a lot, I'm not defined by my job, but if you took my job away, my life would completely lack structure. When do you get up in the morning if you don't have to get up in the morning? And, when do you eat lunch if you don't have a lunch break? And what do you do with your brain when you're not? If I wasn't thinking about the next article, the next monologue, the next video I was going to produce or whatever it might be, I don't actually know what my brain would do. It kind of fold in on itself, I would have thought. Mick says, seen some eye-watering videos about the Indian blokes who cut the ships up. No boots, no eye protection or breathing protection, no purging of any tanks. I agree, 100%. But funny enough, I was saying this last night. I watched a video many years ago. I may have even featured it on this show. I did a reduced version of it. I watched some guys, I think they may have been in Pakistan, actually. They were doing ship breaking, so they were taking the big steel panels, taking them away and beating them into shape to make excavator buckets. You've heard the whole plows in... what is it, into plow... Swords into plow. But basically, they were turning ships into buckets. I'll go away and look up the expression I was looking for there. We've got one more video to play you before this phenomenal new morning monologue that we've got, and we're going to miss a Christmas message coming up from the fine folks at Bobcat right after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, it is, as they say in the song, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. We've got a very, very quick Christmas message from Bobcat. Here we go.
Great moments don't just happen. They're made through the hard work and dedication of countless people working behind the scenes. So this season, we're celebrating you, our holiday heroes, who make it all possible. Together, let's keep moving, lifting, and building the world we want to live in, one moment at a time.
Thank you, Wolfie, for easing my troubled brain. The expression I was looking for was swords into plowshares. You're absolutely right. That is exactly it. Now, just I don't know if I can find that. Bear with for 1 second. We were talking about giving to charity and the donations that have been made earlier. Al Grierson, who made a very generous donation, said this. And I had to go and look it up because it was an expression I'd heard before, but I couldn't remember where. I actually thought it was probably from the Bible, But this is the message that accompanied the donation from Al Grierson. From each according to his ability, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. As far as I can tell, it's a Karl Marx. Not biblical at all, but thank you very much indeed, Al, once again. I've taken away that banner because I'm going to do the morning monologue in a minute. But if anyone would like to make a donation, please do so. demolitionnews.com/. No, let's do it again. buymeacoffee.com/demolition news. There you are. Mick says, worked in Malta a couple of times, cutting plates of wrecks. They were then welded back onto other ships. Nothing wasted there, mate. No, absolutely. Good morning to Joe Brown Construction Company over in the United States of America. Good morning to you, fellas. Very early morning, I would have thought. Speaking of early mornings, our friend Wolfie says, I'm finally able to catch up with the show, thankfully, because I've been getting up at 4:30 for work because we're working overtime. Not that I really enjoy getting up this early. I'll be honest with you, if I had to get up this early, even to produce the show at 4:30, this show would not happen. Absolutely no. Mick says, I now know who to blame for the snow. Yes. Well, like everything, particularly in this house, it's my fault. Queen Mother dying, my fault. Princess Di, that was me. 9/11, yes. All of those things. But according to my wife, I'm responsible for all of those things. Anyway, that's about it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back immediately after this with, as I say, a morning monologue of which I'm really quite proud. So join me in a second. We were talking earlier this week about Prime Minister Keir Starmer's ambitious yet ultimately doomed plans to build 1.5 million new homes in the UK within the next 5 years. Don't worry, I'm not going to revisit that. I think we talked that out pretty thoroughly already. But yesterday I was reading The Big Issue. You know, the magazine to help the homeless? Well, not surprisingly, The Big Issue has a lot to say on the subject of homes. Homes in general and on empty homes in particular. According to a recent study by Action on Empty Homes, there are just under 1 million homes in the UK that are not currently in use. Now, admittedly, that figure does include almost 280,000 second homes that are currently unoccupied. I'm not suggesting that we seize second homes to house the homeless. Yes, there are some unscrupulous landlords out there, but there are also many people who have worked bloody hard to get themselves a second property as part of their retirement plan. But even if you take those 280,000 second homes out of the equation, that still leaves more than 700,000 homes that could be occupied, but currently aren't. If those existing homes were filled, Keir Starmer could cut his overly ambitious plans in half, making that plan a whole lot more likely to succeed. Now, as I said, I'm not planning to revisit that. We've talked that to death. But this did set me thinking about how this might apply to the current skill shortage that is gripping the UK demolition and construction sector. We know the figures of how many workers we supposedly need to attract, but does the industry actually have the equivalent of those 700,000 plus empty homes? Well, yes, it does. There are thousands of workers out there right now that, for one reason or another, are not currently occupied in work terms. Like those empty homes, they're fit for purpose, they're ready to go, but they're not being utilised. So how many demolition and construction workers are sat at home right now, 2 weeks before Christmas, because the project they're earmarked for doesn't start until the new year? How many are sat at home because they hold a competence card, but it's the wrong colour? How many are sat at home right now because they arrived for work on a new site wearing yellow, only to be told it's an all-orange PPE site? How many are sat at home now because they were wearing the wrong boots? How many are sat at home because they're on pain medication and they failed a drug test as a result? How many are sat at home because they were injured at work? How many are sat at home because they broke under the stress heaped upon them by a previous employer or a supervisor? How many are sat at home because they were outspoken about safety and have been labelled a rabble-rouser or a troublemaker? How many are sat at home because their face didn't fit or because they weren't part of some on-site clique? How many are sat at home because they expressed their concern about working alongside colleagues that were clearly under the influence of drugs or alcohol? And probably most timely of all, how many will be sat at home after the 31st of December when the end of grandfather rights robs them of their CSCS competence cards? Now, this isn't just a list of hypotheticals. Each of these situations represents a person, a trained, capable and valuable worker, left idle because of bureaucracy, mismanagement or petty on-site politics. And the consequences are enormous. For the workers, it's lost income, stress, a feeling of uselessness. For the industry, it's a self-inflicted wound, widening the so-called skill shortage that's strangling progress. The irony of it all is infuriating. While we bang the drum about attracting new talent, hosting job fairs and launching campaigns to inspire the next generation, we leave experienced, trained workers sitting at home, twiddling their thumbs, their skills going to waste. Like the housing crisis, where 1 million homes sit empty while thousands sleep rough, the construction sector is failing to utilise what it already has. Imagine if we took the same approach to workers as we should to those empty homes. What if we actively sought out the workers sidelined by red tape, minor oversights or unfortunate circumstance? What if we found ways to rehabilitate or reintegrate them into the workforce, just as we should be finding ways to bring back empty homes back into use? Take the workers who failed drug tests because of prescribed painkillers. Why not implement better testing systems that distinguish between illegal drug use and legitimate medical treatment? What about the workers injured on the job? Why aren't we offering more meaningful rehabilitation programs that not only heal their bodies, but also ease their transition back into the workforce? Take the workers pushed out because of safety concerns. Instead of labelling them troublemakers, why aren't we listening to them and addressing their concerns? And the end of grandfather rights is another glaring example. Thousands of older workers, many with decades of experience, will lose their competence cards overnight. Does anybody believe the industry is in such a surplus of talent that it can afford to let those workers go? Or is this another case of misplaced priorities where the pursuit of regulation trumps the practical needs of the industry? And then there are what I can only call cultural issues. Workers excluded because of petty dress codes or site-specific rules that prioritise conformity over competence and good sense. Workers ostracised for not fitting in with the social dynamics of a particular crew. These are not insurmountable problems. They're fixable, but only if we're willing to admit they exist and commit to addressing them. If the government were to take advantage of all those houses lying empty, more than 700,000 people could be housed immediately. They could put a massive dent in the nation's homelessness problem. Similarly, if the demolition and construction industry were to take advantage of all those workers currently warming their sofas, the skill shortage could be eradicated instantly. The workers exist, the skills exist, the need exists. What's missing is the will to connect the dots, to bridge the gap between potential and reality. And that's a failure of leadership, not just in government, but across the industry. We're constantly told that we need to think big, to innovate, to be bold in solving the problems of our time. But maybe, just maybe, the solutions aren't as grand or as complex as we've been led to believe. Maybe the solutions are already in front of us, quietly waiting for someone to notice them. A boarded up house on a quiet street, a competent worker on a worn out sofa, both ready, willing and able to be part of the solution, if only somebody would give them the chance. So to the policymakers, the industry leaders, and frankly anyone else who claims to care about the housing crisis or the skill shortage, I'll leave you with this. Stop looking for answers in the abstract. Stop reinventing the wheel. Instead, take a long, hard look at what you already have, because sometimes the key to progress isn't about building something new. Sometimes it's as simple as using what you already have. Keir Starmer, Construction Leadership Council, the National Federation of Demolition Contractors. I present that. I lay that before the House and leave you to do your thing. I did look, by the way, to see how many demolition and construction workers were likely to be laid up. This is an interesting time to be doing this, because obviously there are a lot of projects where they've been given the go-ahead from planning or whatever it might be, and does anyone really want to start a job and then lock it up and leave it over the Christmas and New Year period? So a lot of jobs that are ready to go are not started until the second week in January. So as a result of that, there's an awful lot of workers that were rearing to go. They're all ready to rock and roll, but they've been told, no, stand down, come back in January. I understand that from a logistical point of view, but that doesn't help put food on the table of those workers. But then when we think about all those multiple reasons, our friend Footy is sat at home. He failed a drug test because he's on cocodamol. 2 members of my family, not my direct family, but 2 members of my family are currently on cocodamol. It's a common prescription drug. Why is the drug testing system not geared towards that? Why is the presentation of a prescription that says, I'm on cocodamol for chronic pain? Why isn't that enough for a waiver to be produced? What about all the workers that are sat at home for all those other reasons? They've been scapegoated for being a troublemaker because they pointed out a health and safety problem, or because they pointed out the fact that somebody was off their tits on drugs. How many are sat at home because they were injured? How many are sat at home because they were basically stressed beyond breaking point by working in demolition and construction? All of those people that we so desperately need are sat at home because the industry is not looking in the right place. We're spending time, energy, resources, and millions of pounds saying, young people, come to us. This is the greatest industry in the world. And young people, by and large, are going, no, fuck that. I'd rather work in an office where I've got air conditioning and free coffee. We're spending all of that money, all that time, and all that effort when we've actually got people that are experienced, sat there, ready to go. And on top of that, the loss of grandfather rights. I've been banging this drum for nearly 2 years now, and it's been going on an awful lot longer than that. Come the 31st of December, there's going to be an awful lot of people that are not currently sat at home, but as of the 31st of December, they will have no choice because their card scheme now requires them to have an MVQ, and either they couldn't get a place on an MVQ course or they've chosen not to. We are, as an industry, allowing that to happen. Industry leadership needs to take a fucking long, hard look at itself, because all of those problems that I've raised, all of those workers that are currently sat on their sofas, going back to what Footy said earlier, desperate to work, desperate to get that structure back in their life. They are skilled, they're competent, they're proven, they're trained, everything else, and they're sat at home, not because of their choice, but because of you, construction leadership. And scene. Okay, let's have a look at what the chat is saying, shall we? Mick says, you got any dustbin lids running about in the background? Yes, grandchildren came and went. I did wonder if you would hear them. I now know that quite clearly you did. Yes, it is. They're quite loud. I mean, they're 5 and 6. They are quite loud. They're on their way to see Santa over at the St Nicholas Centre in Sutton. So my apologies if they were interrupting, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm on medication, failed a drug test. They still sent me home, told I wasn't allowed on the site. Why aren't you allowed to take your medication, but your doctor gives you? Yeah, exactly. I am an absolute advocate for drug testing on site. I wouldn't want to work, even in this environment, I wouldn't want to be working alongside somebody that was under the influence of any kind of recreational narcotic. I really wouldn't. But if you are on prescribed drugs, if you are on prescription drugs, I was reminded of this recently. I'm of an age now where when I travel overseas, I now travel with medication. I'm on statins, I'm on blood pressure tablets, and I'm also on metformin for my diabetes. I'm on half a dozen tablets a day. I went to the Netherlands last week, and I know that part of my deal, because I don't want to be seen as some narcos drug smuggler, I take along with me, all my medication in my hand luggage, along with my prescription, so that if I am stopped, and I wasn't this time, but if I am stopped, I can say, yes, I need all of those to keep me upright. Here's a prescription from my doctor. Here is even, I've even got one of, I've even got one of these, my NHS card, which proves I need all of those things as well. I've got all of that, so please don't arrest me as a drug smuggler. I need all of those. We have the ability to do that in a high security situation like an airport. Why the fuck aren't we saying to somebody, well, you failed a drug test? I've kind of expected that because I'm on cocodamol. Oh, are you? Can you prove that? Well, here's my prescription. Oh, my apologies. Back to work you go. How fucking hard is that? How hard is that? Mick says, did see they're getting to grips with the planning lark, also the Greenfield sites, but what the hell is Greyfields? Anyone know? Not really. Not really. Whenever I hear that expression, you know that thing about, something's got to be black and white, there's no grey. The very fact that they've labelled it as grey kind of suggests that is it black or is it white? It's grey. Depending how we feel on that particular day, you can build on it. Or maybe not. That's there you are. Mark Anthony, I think you should run for Prime Minister. I don't think anyone wants that. Dan Cullen says, I have 100 plus texts and 30 plus calls a day for people looking for work. It's shocking. Just very, very quickly, Dan. I don't really need all the details. Very, very quickly, how many people have you got on your books at the moment? Because if they're on your books, chances are, and I realise, some people won't have updated you, but chances are those people are currently looking for work. And if you've got 100, 200, 500, 1,000, that's a dent in the skill shortage. Why? Why aren't they in work? When they are quite clearly trained and capable and everything else. Stefan Edwards, when visiting last week the Netherlands, you missed out on the opportunity to visit our office, Brown and Mason BV. I did miss an opportunity. I would love to come to Brown and Mason BV. Big admirer of Brown and Mason. Listen, if there were a coal-fired power station in my back garden, there isn't, but if there were, and I needed to demolish it, I would make but one phone call, and it would be to Brown and Mason. I absolutely would. So yes, I listen. If there's an opportunity to come to, I was only there for a day and a half, and most of it was chucking it down with rain. But if I could ever visit Brown and Mason in the Netherlands, love to do so. Going back to failing drug tests, companies called Kia, they're the people doing the drug test, only for digger drivers. Which, if that is their specialist area. I don't know them, but if that is their specialist area, surely it will not come as a surprise to learn that some people are on prescription drugs. I am. I'm fairly sure it was Chris Ford mentioned the fact that he is a diabetic. Chances are he is probably on medication as well. I would imagine probably half, if not 3/4 of the people actually in the chat right now are on some form of medication. How hard can it possibly be for a specialist drug system, a specialist drug company to actually say, okay, well, we will make allowance for that? Or better still, upgrade their testing process to ensure that people don't fall foul of that testing system. I'm going to stop very quickly because I just want to let you know. We've just had, I can't get it to work on here for some reason. Bear with me 1 second. Can I get that to work? We've just had another donation from Tristan Mays. Always happy to help you, and I look like I need a coffee. Tristan, you've met me in person several times. I always look like this. I am always this rough looking, but thank you, my friend. Thank you indeed. And I take back virtually everything I said about cranes and those that operate them. You're a prince among men, and you're a king among the crane world, and I thank you from the heart of my bottom. Mick says, grandfather lights are lost. 60,000 out of the game. Agree with your words, it's a total cock-up. But think of the money the car system is going to make. So fuck the workers, let's just con them again. But how unbelievably short-sighted. We when you take that at face value, and I realise it's more complex than that, but if you take that at face value, the card companies, here's construction and demolition, the card companies are over here. Between them, they have devised a system whereby they will earn lots more money because they need to upgrade all these people to MVQs. At the same time, the industries upon which they leech, they are parasites, and they have hooked themselves, they've hooked their claws and their teeth into demolition and construction. Over here, we're crying out for workers, but they're getting rich off the back of that lack of workers. How are we allowing that as a notion to exist? Why was our reaction for Build UK, CLC, NFDC, CEA, CPA, all of these Federation of Master Builders? Why did we not greet the idea of upgrading everybody to MVQs, or more specifically, the ending of grandfather rights with, yeah, we hear what you're saying, but fuck off. Fuck right off. And when you finish fucking right off, fuck off a bit more. Why did we not say that? Instead of which, well, yeah, okay, we'll have fewer workers. It's going to make us slower and less productive and less profitable. But okay, the training companies will be doing quite nicely. Thank you. Footy says, I had a phone call from Flannery the other day asking me if I could go and drive a rubber duck. I said, yeah, where is it? They told me, Wales. I told them I had to get to Wales, where I'm living is 5.5 hours driving one way. I think it's a bit too far. Dartmouth, and they went, we think it's a bit far as well. It's not hard to check somebody's address, is it? Fucking glad I'm not looking for work. One of the tablets I take is radioactive. Gould alone knows what bills will green. But even when you go in for your P test or your blood test or whatever it might be, before I do the test, can I show you my prescription for my glow-in-the-dark pills? You see that? Here's from my doctor. You can verify it. The phone number's on there. You can phone, even before I do the test, you can speak to my doctor and find out what I'm on and why I'm on it. Okay, you're happy with that? Right, now take the test. And if you fail the test, say, well, I did tell you. You've got the doctor's telephone number. Give him a call, get me verified, and I can go back to work. But no, the answer is no, you failed. And I'm bearing in mind, this has literally just occurred to me, bearing in mind when we're talking about, and I'm not talking specifically footy here, but he is on cocodamol. There is every likelihood that he is on cocodamol because of pain caused, directly or otherwise, by his job. If there's one thing that unites all of you, if all of you have ever driven an excavator, all of you getting out of the cab, getting back up into the cab, will know that jolt as you get off that bottom step, I'm not talking about mini excavators, I'm talking about the big boys' toys, that jolt will damage your knees and damage your hips. Okay, you will end up, if you do that for 20, 30, 40 years, you will end up with some serious jip in your hip. I can't do a rhyming one, but you'll end up with some pain in your knees, okay? So you may well end up on pain medication, and you're on pain medication because of the design of the machines and the way in which you are required to work. And when you treat that, you are forbidden from working. If anybody can make some sense of that, I'd love to hear from you, because that sounds utterly fucked up to me. I'm swearing a lot today. I do apologise. Yes, I apologise unreservedly. If there's any young people watching, I apologise. Any ladies watching, I apologise. You get me. You get the idea. Here's an interesting thing, says Chris Ford. There is an older farming family who don't want to sell their land for development, so the council is looking at compulsory purchase order on it so private developers can build on it. Yeah. There you are. Now, just to prove that I'm not completely barking mad, Tristram over at Crane Hub just said, my knees are shot from jumping off crane tracks and booms. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure that most of the guys that are on machines of any sort of size will feel exactly the same. I get it. I'm on and off machines. Christ, if I get on half a dozen machines in a year, I've had a pretty good year. But literally, even though I know it's coming, that last step from the step on the undercarriage or whatever it might be, down to the ground is always at least that far too far. So when you hit the ground, you get that jolt up your knee, jolt in your hip. Do that enough times. You do that 6-8 times a day. Yeah. By the time you're in your 40s, you'll be feeling it. Chances are you're heading for painkillers. Chances are you could end up with hip replacements and knee joint surgery and that kind of thing. You will require painkillers. And those painkillers may well forbid you from doing the job that inflicted the injury in the first place. 'Tis madness. Graham says, or Footy says rather, in Europe, what do they do about a card system over there to drive a machine, like France, Italy, Germany, and everywhere? Less. The one I find very interesting is over in Australia. They have card schemes, and their card scheme, bizarrely, their card scheme is less rigorous and stringent than ours, by and large, and yet they won't accept ours. If when you go to Australia as an operator, you're expected to prove yourself once again. Chris Ford, mixed orders. Do you glow in the dark? If I'll look out my window this evening and see if I can spot him. Only if I'm in the field with the hound. I've already got my replacement. It wanted me. Not sure what that is. Jim Turner, two subjects close to my heart. Put a post about housing shortage on this morning. Housing shortage can be easily fixed, but the current system needs tearing down and totally reforming. And the skills shortage is pretty much the same. Somebody just Tristan Mays has just said no cars needed in Belgium or Germany, and he speaks from experience because he's a much travelled person. He's like the Judith Chalmers in so many ways. He is the Judith Chalmers of the crane world. But where was I going with this? I wonder. I often wonder about how political decisions are made anyway. If whoever came up with the idea, and I don't believe it was Keir Starmer, I'm sure it was one of his aides, said this will be good for PR, promise them 1.5 million homes in the next 5 years. If instead of that they'd have said promise them 1 million, which is rather more achievable, still hard, still bloody ambitious, but promise them 1 million, but also promise them that you will go and look at, refurbish, refit, bring up to speed all of those houses that are currently empty. We mentioned it the other day about shopping malls being converted, offices being converted into homes. We know the fact that we have a dearth of people to do the construction. So why don't we do a nationwide survey of all of the homes? Now, some of them will need a lot of work doing on them, but some will just be empty because people have died or whatever it might be. It might be as simple as a lick of paint. It might not even be that. And if the difference between sleeping rough or sleeping in a home where the decor is a bit out of date, I would imagine that most people would say, never mind the decor, thank you very much for the place to sleep that isn't in the pissing rain. It's an easy set of maths. Why did we not do that? And then I keep coming back to this. I wish I could find some facts and figures. This industry supposedly employs, across demolition and construction, supposedly employs somewhere around about 2.5 million people in this country. How many of those people are currently at work, and how many of them are currently at home, unable to work for some spurious, needless reason? Footy making sense now. My left knee, I've already had my knee replacement. Yeah, I know somebody that had a knee replacement about 2 years ago. I think she had her right knee done and swore blind she wouldn't get her left done because it was so bloody painful. Jim says my knees are shot from diving straight out of a JCB 3CX and not bothering with the steps, and because I'm a fat bastard. But listen, I mean, I like to claim that I'm still a female size 12. Don't ask me how I know that. I just do. But I'm not. I've gained some timber over the years. That puts wear and tear. And frankly, again, I was talking about injury, but let's lose sight of the fact that our industry puts on pounds as well. When was the last time you went to a site canteen and was offered a salad. When was the last time you grabbed enough time to pop down to the local cafe and rather than opting for the bacon roll, my personal favourite, somebody said, yes, Caesar salads all round. Nobody ever does that. There's not enough in a salad to keep us going on fuel alone. There isn't. This industry demands fuel, and that fuel can turn into people being fat bastards. And I count myself among those. That is a condition that has been foisted upon us by the industry in which we work. Tristram just says, me and Jim are the same. I'm a size 0. And he then reiterates the shape of a 0. He's not. He's a fine figure of a man, and I won't have a word said against him. Morning, Tristram. Mick says, listening to the news this morning regarding land and house building, and now Chris's message. Got a feeling that let alone the tax lark on farmers, sounds like they want farmers to sell off their land. Something very wrong in all of this. Yeah. Now, and I'm not going to get drawn into politicals here, if this had been sell off your land because we have access to very cheap fruit and veg from France and Spain and Germany and Italy and so on down the line, I wouldn't agree with it. I think it would still go against everything that we stand for as a nation. But if we had easy access to all of that fruit and veg and produce that we need out of Europe, reducing some land, some farm sizes, I don't like the idea, but we've had Brexit. We can't fucking feed ourselves. You fucking morons. We can't feed ourselves now. If you reduce the size of farms, if you penalise farmers, we are going to go fucking hungry. How fucking stupid do you need to be? Is that the prerequisite for politics now? I'd like to be an MP. Are you an idiot? Yes, I am. Job's yours, sir. Sign on the dotted line, and here's your expense account. What the hell are we talking about here? And I will go back to this. You know, we have a construction industry training board. We've got the Construction Leadership Council. We've got all the training organisations, all the trade bodies, and all of them, to a man, have been falling over themselves to invite young people into the industry, most of whom have no desire to be here whatsoever. Has anybody even thought to look at the number of people that are currently sidelined that are trained, competent, willing, and able? Has anybody even bothered to open that can of worms? Mick says, why don't they take from the Crown Estates and Church and all the effing toffs? Power to the people, my friend. That would be my starting point. That would absolutely be my starting point. You know, we do live in a nation that still believes it's living in a fairy tale. We have princes and princesses and dukes and duchesses and such bollocks. And I'm not a fan of the royal family. Okay, I'll make it clear. And I realise I may be in the minority here. But this, did you see the TV and the newspaper coverage of Kate Middleton, as was the possibly future queen, whatever. She had, or she was supposedly, she organised a carol service. I don't suppose she did a great deal towards it. I'm sure she just put her name to it, pitched up on the day, looking resplendent in a red coat. But fuck me, the fawning. Sky News. Radiant Kate shines a light on Christmas. The newspapers. She has single-handedly saved Christmas. She's showing us the way to go. She arrived in a limousine. She left in a limousine. She went back to a fucking castle. For fuck's sake. What on earth are these people talking about? Mick says, we don't need Salisbury Plain. We ain't got a studying army. Build on that. Yeah. Yeah, build on that. And imagine that. Imagine if, Salisbury Plain is a big, big area. Imagine if you did, I'm not saying destroy the whole bloody thing, keep lots of it as green space and everything else, but imagine if you could build a new town, a new Milton Keynes or something Nice. On Salisbury Plain, imagine the amount of employment that would move there, the number of people that would go there that would all need shops, and they'd need roads, and they'd need rail services, all of which creates localized wealth. It creates jobs. It creates community. All of those things. No. Let's build on some grey land that nobody knows where to find. It can't be that hard to think outside such a restrictive box. You know, and going back to the bit about attracting young people, you know, we've been talking about this for 30 odd years that I'm aware of, and we've got worse and worse as we've gone along. We used to be the safety net. You know, you failed at school, come and work in construction. Less and less is that the case because there is further education people are encouraged into, and they end up not. They basically give the industry a swerve. So we've known for decades that young people, by and large, don't particularly fancy this as a career path. Having beaten our head against that particular brick wall for this long, you would have thought that by now somebody would have gone, well, this ain't working. What else can we do? Is there another source of workers? There seems to be quite a bunch over there sat on their sofas. They've all got hard hats. They've all got high-vis jackets. They've all got boots on their feet. They look like construction workers. I've spoken to a few of them. Turns out they are construction workers, and yet they're sat at home. Could we not employ them in some way? No. It makes my head spin, my blood boil, and my spleen tie itself in knots. Just thinking, yes, I do have a spleen. I've had other bits removed, but the spleen is intact. I think that will probably do us. I need to stop because I've already exceeded my swear allowance. I'm going to go and put a £5 note in the swear jar in just a moment. But thank you for your company today. I will. Mick's just said, by the way. Right, stay first, fellas. Bill the cab just phoned. Bit of luck. He has signed my sign ball from Parlour to give to a mate for an auction to keep the mud chute farm from the developers and a new mosque. Fair play. Is that, I'm assuming from Parlour. That's Ray Parlour, right? Yeah, I know things. I don't know quite what the connection is. Is he something to do with Millwall these days? I've lost track, and I'm not trying to be funny here. I actually don't know the answer to that. But yes, good luck. I hope Bill the cab turns up clutching the ball. I'll be back tomorrow. Where are we? It's Thursday today. I'll be back for the final show of the week tomorrow, and then we've got 1 week to go until. Have we? Yeah, we've got 1 week to go until we all go and do something far more pleasurable. Go and spend some time with our family. Force turkey down our respective necks. It is no, mate. He's on the show with Brazil. That they've allowed Alan Brazil and Ray Parlour in. I bet the bar bill in that place is astronomical. But fair play to them. Everybody, go and have a fantastic day. And once again, I'm going to go loop right the way back to the very beginning of this show, to all of those that have contributed over on buymeacoffee.com/demolition news for the cause that we spoke about. Thanks, guys. And I do mean that from the very heart of my bottom. I'll be back tomorrow for more of the same. Hopefully not an hour and a half tomorrow, but hey, you never know. Try the gun, mate. It's a boozer's heaven. The gun. Where is the gun? Let me know offline. I think I did mention I do have a hankering for a pint of Guinness. The trouble is the pint will be 2 pints, will be 3, will be me under a table somewhere, ruining my choices. But yeah, we shall see. Everybody, have a fantastic day. Thanks for your company. Thanks for all your input. Really appreciate it. See you on the morrow. All the best. And apparently, just for those fancying a pint, the dog is on the Isle of Dogs, which is where your hound probably feels most at home. You see what I did there. Have a good day.